Welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. We're looking to do a customer info session on WMGLD's heat pump offerings. What's new and things like that. And my name's Joe Collins. I'm a business analyst with the Wakefield Gas and Light Department, and I'm here with Olivia as well. And then we have two guests from Abode Energy Management. They're our heat pump consultants. So very happy to have them here today too to kind of go through some heat pump 101 and how they work and things like that. So today we're going to go through educating customers on how heat pumps work and their benefits, the heat pump do's and don'ts, um, selecting a heat pump that works for you. And then on the WMGLD program side, we're going to go over the new optional seasonal residential heat pump rate, as well as the 2026 heat pump rebates and the process to fill out a rebate. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them periodically throughout and then also at the end. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the Abode team to go through some of the heat pump 101 stuff.
Thanks so much, Joe. Um, so my name is Jamie Haber. I am the decarbonization consultant for Abode for the municipal light plants in Massachusetts. And I'm here to talk to you about heat pumps. If you end up scheduling a consultation with Abode, you'll probably end up speaking with me as well. So feel free to take what you learned today and feed it back to me at the consultation. Um, all right, so heat pumps you may have heard of. You've seen these little things on the wall. You're like, oh, that's a heat pump, right? So that's one of them. Um, Heat pumps are a really neat technology. They've been around for a long time and they've only gotten better. Heating and cooling comes from the same unit. So the outdoor unit provides both heating and cooling depending on the season. So it's a lot simpler than uh, a setup where you have multiple different sources for heating and cooling. Heat pumps can improve comfort overall because they just can be a lot more controllable as far as zoning and things like that for the house. Um, there's no more on-site combustion, so there's no risk of like gas leaks or carbon monoxide or smells from an oil boiler or something like that. They're a lot quieter as well. And they have really good benefits, especially with uh, a town like Wakefield, where you have pretty low electric rates. Um, they will reduce your energy use and reduce your energy bill most likely. And they also help you lower your emissions. So we're going to talk about today just kind of heat pumps 101. And then Joe and Olivia are going to talk about the Wakefield rebate programs and heat pump rate that are available now. And so Paxton and I are going to talk to you about just the overall basics of heat pump 101 and what Abode has to offer as part of this mix. So what is a heat pump? Well, much as the name suggests, it is a pump. So sort of like a water pump pumps water, a heat pump pumps heat. So it's not creating heat. It's not creating heat like an oil system or a gas system would create the heat. And essentially it's using the same basic technology as an air conditioning system, a refrigerator, um, window ACs, things like that. It basically just takes heat from one place and pumps it to the other place. We'll explain a little bit more about how that works in the next slide. But essentially, in the summer, you're pumping heat out just like a central AC would. And in the winter, that system reverses and it can pump heat inside the house. You may be wondering, well, Jamie, it's really cold out in the winter. How is it pumping heat into my house? The trick is that there's a refrigerant cycle and a condenser and a compressor. So effectively, the refrigerant that it uses will capture the heat of the outside air, even down to zero or lower in some cases, because the refrigerant itself is boiling at -40. So if it's boiling really far below zero, and then you take that boiling gas and you can condense it into a into a liquid, it basically can release its heat into the air handler, and you'll get your heating in the winter time. In the summertime, it just reverses that process. The refrigerant just takes warm, hot air from your house and pumps it to the outside of the building, basically the opposite direction. When you design a heat pump system for a house, it really comes down to these three big tenets: distribution, capacity, and how well it maintains that capacity. So basically, with distribution, we're talking about, is it going to be ducted? Is it going to be ductless? Is it going to be a combination of both? How is the heat getting out to the house? Because most heat pumps at this point in the US work on an air basis, air to air, ground to air. There are air to water heat pumps. We're not going to talk about those tonight. Um, so we're going to focus on air to air tonight. Sizing is another one. We'll talk about how to properly size a system, and then the capacity maintenance. We'll get into that a little bit more too. Okay. So there's components of a heat pump system. Pretty much you're always going to see an outdoor unit similar to one you see here, or one that looks like your old school cube air conditioner with the fan on the top. For the indoor units, it's either going to be some kind of a ducted air handler in the basement or the attic, knee wall sometimes. On the top there in the middle, you have a common mini split ductless unit wall mount. On the bottom with the cat is a floor mount unit, which is another option. So if you don't want the wall unit ones, floor unit ones are good, especially if you're like replacing a steam system, for example. They can take the same place as a radiator. And then the top right corner there, that's actually a ceiling cassette. So that whole thing goes up into the ceiling between floors, and it can be really nice because it's really low profile and it can distribute air in four directions at once. So nice for big open spaces. Yeah, and there's an example of those three in action. And that's the ductless side. For ducted, and this is something that's typically recommended for smaller rooms as well. You have two options essentially. The standard kind of ducted system basically replicates what you would have in a central AC. So if your house has central AC, you can pretty much always use those ducts again for a heat pump. If you don't have central AC, you can retrofit ductwork in pretty easily from attic spaces, sometimes from basement spaces. Um, and then there's the compact ducted systems, which they're really designed for smaller spaces, and it tends to I tend to see these a lot with like Cape style homes where you have small rooms, like big floor plan but small rooms. Um, because a compact ducted naturally takes up less space. The air handler is much smaller. It's usually the thin thing in the ceiling they call a pancake unit. Um, and it's generally just better for a smaller application. When you're talking about sizing, so there is this wonderful thing that we call the Goldilocks effect, where we don't want it to be too big, we don't want it to be too small. We want it to be just right. When you try to condition too much space with too little heat, if it's too small of a system, it's just going to run at full blast basically the entire time. It's going to shorten the lifespan of the equipment, drive up the electric bill, may have some comfort issues. If it's mini splits or ductless systems, they may not get heat to every room that you want them to. if it's not properly sized. So that's something to think about. Um, yeah, it's like it says on the slide. It's like sort of like heating with a wood stove. So you got centralized kind of to one area. Um, when you're trying to condition a space and there's way too much power, and this is oversizing the system. This is actually unfortunately pretty common in the marketplace. Um, but when you try to basically put too much power into too little space, you run into a side effect called short cycling. When I think about short cycling and how a heat pump wants to work, I usually think about a car on the highway, and you say, okay, well, why? I'm like, well, because if a car on the highway is driving 65 miles an hour on cruise control, it's going to be a lot more efficient than a car on the highway driving in bumper to bumper traffic. So bumper to bumper is kind of like that short cycling. It's going forward and backward and forward and stop, forward and stop. And with the heat pump, you really want to be maintaining that constant output. So sizing it too big tends to lead to short cycling. That can lead to comfort issues in the summertime with humidity issues. It can lead to comfort issues in the wintertime with uneven heating, and it can wear the machinery out faster and drive up your overall operational costs. So realistically, we want to get it as right size as possible. Actually, go back to that one more time, Joe. Sorry. So the way that they do this is something called Manual J, which is a calculation from the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. Um, it's a really interesting calculation that takes into consideration many, many, many different variables about the house. Everything from how much volume of space, square footage of space, how much insulation there is in the house, the window quality, the window quantity, the direction of the house versus the sun. A lot of factors like this, air infiltration rates. And it basically says, okay, at a design temperature, which for the Wakefield area is about 8 degrees, and that's based on 30 years of climate data. So what that basically says is that if we design for 8 degrees, that represents 99% of the days in the winter over the last 30 years. So we design for that 8-degree mark, and we say, all right, well, how much heating, how many BTUs per hour does this house actually need based on those set of variables and the measurements that we took today? And a lot of the measurements are actually now done with LiDAR. They scan the room. It's really cool. And they can come up with a pretty much prescriptive number that says this is the size heat pump that's going to be needed to meet the conditions of this house. Where that can go sideways is this next slide. So yeah, Joe, go ahead. So capacity maintenance. Another way to talk about this is heating capacity maintenance. Another way to talk about it is capacity loss, capacity drop. So you get that number right, and you say, all right, this manual J says I need this many BTUs of heating per hour to maintain the house. But that's at a really cold day. That's like an 8-degree day, like we were saying. All the rated outputs of these systems, they're calculated in the 40s, 45, 46, 47 degrees, something like that. That's where your rated output is going to be measured. And so the manufacturers actually have to publish data that says what is the difference between the rated output in the 40s and the maximum output of the system at 5 degrees. So what we can do as part of our quote review is help you look at the differences between the systems. For example, system one here in this example only maintains 72% of its capacity at 5 degrees, which means that if your house needs 4 tons of heating or 48,000 BTUs per hour, if it's losing 28% of its capacity, means it's only going to have 35,000. It's only going to have 3 tons essentially at 5 degrees. That's not going to cut it. It's going to struggle to keep up with the house. And even though it's technically sized correctly at 47 degrees, 45 degrees, it's not sized correctly for the design temperature that cold day. This is why oversizing tended to be a really easy solution because, like, well, the system loses 20%. Let's just make it 20% bigger. Honestly, we don't have to do that anymore. There are so many heat pumps on the market today that can maintain 100% or very close to 100% of their rated capacity, all the way down to 5 or lower. And so if you're thinking about using a dual fuel setup where like, oh man, do I need to keep my gas system? Do I need to keep my oil system? Not necessarily, because if the heat pump is designed properly with the right output, the right capacity, and the right amount of capacity maintenance, you won't have to worry about a secondary heat source or anything like that.
And
Go over to Paxton now.
hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Paxton, also working with Abode as program manager. So, just going to into kind of what are the systems that we're talking about. Jamie, mentioned that these are air to air, so air source heat pumps, but they're not just air source heat pumps. In New England, we're looking at cold climate air source heat pumps. So, when systems are being selected for the Wakefield program, as well as many other programs throughout the state and the region, the systems have to meet a certain criteria to be eligible qualifying systems. So right here you see the Energy Star cold climate certification. So that's one component, but we actually use the NEEP list, which is a list of almost 300,000 cold climate heat pump
Huh?
systems. There's also the Mass Save
What?
heat pump qualified product list. So either of these
Oh, hello,
are
Paxton.
large lists that you can pick a system from. So just as a kind of factoid here, so in 2023, Maine was the nation's leading installer of cold climate heat pumps. So it just shows you that it really comes down to the selection of the heat pump system. And refrigerants have changed too. So in 2026, there is a new refrigerant type that has an even lower boiling point. It has less global warming potential. But there are some other considerations with it. There is some slight efficiency gains. So all these things are kind of factored into, what systems are eligible and what systems you should be going out and asking contractors for quotes of. We can go to the next slide. And just going back to what Jamie was talking about here. So this is just an example with some screenshots of what a manual J calculation looks like that a contractor might complete. So you have the outdoor design temperature, you have the square footage of the home, you have how many heating BTUs are needed in the home, how many cooling BTUs are needed. So this is just how heat pumps are sized is by BTUs. So um, again, when you think about a heat pump, you also want to think about weatherization. And the weatherization has a direct effect on the sizing of the system. When especially installing a system for a whole home, it's important that the final values, the R values, which is basically how insulated something is factored into the manual J calculation. So it's always good to ask, when you are doing a whole home heat pump project, maybe you're disconnecting gas, to just ask about these things, and you'll learn that with the weatherization, you actually get more of a rebate, and we'll talk about that a little bit further on. And then this tool is just kind of one of the tools in our toolkit at Abode. So um, we help customers through consultations. We also have a quote comparison tool that will basically collect all the quotes and run the neat data, the qualified product list data for the system, and compare it against your prior heating usage. If you have a manual J, that can also be uploaded. And basically, what this is just it's going to break down for you a lot of the different variables that you have to consider when you're about to buy a heat pump. Here you can see just
wildly different costs between one quote and other quote. One is 54,000, one is 28,000. These are all real numbers, just docked to not have any personal information, but you can really see that there's a lot of variability in both operating cost, how environmentally friendly the system is. So maybe you're motivated by cost reasons, or maybe you're motivated by just your environmental impact. So we can take a look at that with you, and just there's a second page on the next slide that just again provides a little bit more information. Yeah, here you can actually just see the difference in CO2 output, the cost of purchase, rebates that are available. Um, and it also factors in the sizing component that we talked about earlier. And again, Abode, we're readily available. So, if customers have questions, they can reach out to us, schedule a consultation. There is a list of contractors for the program that you can select from. It's not a requirement. Um, so yeah, and I will pass it off to, I believe, Joe here, who is going to be talking about the heat pump rate.
Yes, thank you to both Jamie and Paxton for coming in. I mean, we've worked with Abode for I think over 5 years now. They've done probably over 400 consultations, could even be more than that now. They always have done a great job, and we appreciate having them. And to any customer who wants to, it's a free resource to use, and they're great. So thanks to you guys for that piece of that. So to kick it off on the WMGLD program side, something we released starting in December of this of 2025 is the optional seasonal heat pump rate. So what is it? The optional seasonal heat pump rate is a rate for customers with heat pumps in their homes. The rate offers a discount on electricity during the heating season, which is November through April bills. So we took a two-tiered approach. So one tier is the all-electric customer, and this is the HP Res A. This is a 3 cent discount on the distribution charge during that heating season. The second tier is the if you want to keep your fossil fuel, which many people do, it is half of that discount. Basically, it's a cent and a half discount on the distribution charge during that same period. The caveat here is if you're a customer that's a gas customer, um, if you're on the natural gas heating rate, you'll be switched over to the gas appliance rate, which has a delivery charge that 20 cents higher. And the rationale here is if you're heating your house with heat pumps, um, it makes sense to be on the other gas rate because we want to see you kind of switch more towards that heat pump. So in doing so, we switch you over to the gas appliance rate, and so that's a consideration to have if you put heat pumps in just one room in your house, but you keep your gas as your major heating source. It might not be worth going onto this rate because it is an optional rate. Um, so customers receiving the all-electric seasonal rate must verify the absence of fossil fuel. And this can be done through an energy audit or physical inspection. We'll send one of our engineers out to just go through a checklist and verify that there's no fossil fuel at the residence. Um, so here's just a little breakdown of where the electric and gas rates go in the two tiers. So as you'll see in those boxes, those are the things that change with the rate. So you'll see the distribution charge is a little over 4 cents for the regular residential electric rate. And so if you go over to the HP Res A, which is the all electric rate, this is reduced by that 3 cents that we were talking about. And then if you move one more column to the right, you have the cent and a half discount off of the residential rate. And just for visual purposes, you'll see some of the other components of each of the rates, which will be the same for all of them. And below, if gas is applicable to you, you'll see the gas customer charge on if you get switched over to the gas appliance rate um, goes down by $1. So it goes from 625 to 525. So there is a small piece of savings on the monthly side there. But then you'll see on the delivery charge, there's that 20-cent increase. So again, if you use gas a lot during the winter, it may not be worth it for you. But as you'll see in a later slide, there is a calculator that will help you figure out if it makes sense for you. And we work with you as well. So, we're not trying to we're trying to put you on the best rate for you. Not trying to collect any extra money or anything like that. Um, so here's just an interesting graphic. So, the investor-owned utilities, Unitil, National Grid, Eversource, have also released a heat pump rate as well, and this just shows their average prices in those blue uh, bars right there versus what their heat pump rate would be. And then you see us over on the right. You can see kind of where we stack up with what they're doing as well. So just an interesting visual to show. So when looking at your bill, an actual example of the bill here. So this is an example of somebody who was on the gas heat rate before. Um, and so you'll see the rate classes that they're on are, and all the way to the right, are LA, which is the residential electric, and then also they're on the GHR, which is gas heat residential. Um, for so you'll see as described in a couple other slides, you'll see the 625 gas customer charge with the 59 close to 60-cent delivery charge for this. And then below, you'll see the electric charge is at that residential regular electric rate at the close to 4.5 cents. And so looking at the same customer situation a month later, you'll see now you'll know that you're on the rate because you have heat pump res B in the top right corner when you're looking up at the meter read area. And then you'll see GA instead of GHR. And that's gas non-heat. That's the gas non-heat rate. And you can see it on the bill in this way, where you see the 525 for the gas charge, customer charge, and then for the delivery charge, you'll see that 80 cents right there per CCF. And then below with the electric charges, you'll see that 1.5 cent discount, the close to 3 cents right there. So that's kind of what it looks like on your actual bills. That's how it will show up. So as an example. Um, as far as signing up and getting more information, there's a questionnaire form to fill out if you think that it's something that you want, which in a lot of cases, it is beneficial for people to do it. And even if it's not, you can fill out the questionnaire form and it will ask you a bunch of different questions and it'll ask you what heating types you have and things like that. And based on that information, we'll reach back out to you. And if it makes sense to sign you up, we'll let you know that you're signed up. If there's more information we need from you, we'll reach out and ask and say, hey, you said that you're all electric. Well, we'd like to verify that. Could you attach an energy audit that's a recent one? Or, we'll have to send somebody out just to take a look. And in a lot of cases, because we've been doing a heat pump rebate program for a number of years, 5 or 6 years now, we reached out to all customers that we had information on that had done those rebates and just let people know via email that this existed. So we've been able to sign up a lot of customers. And one consideration as well that I don't know that is noted here is this is eligible for renters as well. Um, and in a lot of cases, especially with the new buildings that exist, we know those are all electric in many cases. So you might already have that on the bill if you're a renter and you live in one of those newer um, apartment complexes. And if you think that you would qualify as a renter, we encourage you to reach out to us, and we can try to figure out what other buildings might have some, or maybe your unit in a building has heat pumps and that you would qualify for this rate. So we encourage people to do that as well. Um, so frequently asked questions are on our website, and we started off with 8 questions, and then we'll add more if people end up asking additional questions. And um, my information will be listed at the end of the presentation too, my email. So you'll be able to reach out to me directly. I always welcome that. We definitely want to help people out the best that we can. So I mentioned the bill calculator. Right now, it's a downloadable spreadsheet. We're looking at potentially adding it directly to the website so you can fill out your usage, use cases, and things like that, making it even more customer friendly to try to see what the savings would be if you're putting in your actual gas and electric usage, for instance, from a prior year or something like that. It's especially relevant for people who are keeping gas and were on the gas heat residential rate because there's going to be the savings on the electric side for the discount, and then there's also going to be the the negative impact if you use a lot of gas because of that increased delivery charge on the gas. So yeah, we're looking at integrating that tool into the website to make it easier for people to fill out. Here's a pretty helpful matrix on kind of what scenarios is this really going to help people out in. Obviously, the top scenario being you're going to qualify for the HP Res A rate. You're all electric, heat pumps are your primary heating source, you don't have any fossil fuel. This is very beneficial for you. Going down the list, you get scenario two. Maybe you have gas as your secondary heating type. Um, but you're planning to use heat pumps as your primary, and you just use keep gas as a backup last minute thing, and maybe you use gas for cooking as well. That's still beneficial as long as you're using the heat pumps as the primary source and don't use the gas as much. Um, and then looking at oil, you'll be on the HP Res B as well because you still have fossil fuel. It's beneficial for people to do that one as well. And yeah, looking at a situation where, maybe it's a case by case as you get further down. Scenario five shows that situation where gas is your primary and you use heat pumps as your secondary. You get switched to the gas non-heat rate. However, this is case by case. Maybe if you heat 50/50, it, it there's maybe it's a benefit, maybe it isn't, but that's where the calculator can help, and we can also help you with that. But I think a situation where it doesn't really make that much sense, or rather, there's a scenario seven is if you don't use heat pumps for heating, you don't have heat pumps, you don't qualify for either of the rates. I think that one's just in there just as the, you know, I guess the worst situation, or the situation where it's not applicable. So those are kind of the different situations there. This is what the bill comparison calculator looks like right now. Um, so you would just put information in those highlighted boxes. And you would put in your usage. And what happens is you'd also pick on the right hand side. There's a drop down menu where that arrow points to HP Res A, and you could pick either HP Res A if you're all electric. You could see what your savings would be for if you had it last year, or you can see HP Res B, especially if you have gas. This will actually show you what the net impact is right at the bottom, the total estimated savings. If that cell is green and the number is black, that means that's going to be a net positive for you if if the cell becomes red and that would mean and it would show a negative value, that would mean that the gas you're using enough gas where it would not be worth it for you to actually be on the Res B because of that switch in gas rates there. Um,
Before
so
you keep going, there's a couple questions about
sure.
this. So someone asked, do we still pay the higher distribution charge for having gas water heating or gas cooktops, etc., if our heating is 100% heat pump?
Yes, in this situation you would. Um, but the good part about a situation like that is that you would most likely save a pretty good amount of money, especially during that winter period. You would end up making out in that deal. Um, again, that you can really see by the comparison tool to see like, okay, what's my steady state usage and what would that bill impact be across a year? And then look at that savings you get during the that 6 month period, and then kind of go from there. But that's a very good question though.
One other question, and maybe this might be for Jamie or Paxton too. I rent. Are there units that can be used without making permanent changes to the structure of the house?
Yes and no. Yes, they exist. There's a couple companies, Medea and Gradient are the two leaders in this field. However, they're not yet NEEP listed, so we're not able to rebate those at this point yet. Um, they are still pretty new to the market as far as direct to consumer. A lot of them have been installed in multifamily type properties, um, in New York and Boston, Providence, things like that. But they're making their way onto the scene for homeowners. There's a couple new brands that we saw at the Build Boston conference last week, and it's exciting. The market is definitely coming soon.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that. See, that's a boat at work right there. The experts. Um, Appreciate that. Yeah, so that's the optional seasonal residential heat pump rate. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but all important adjectives. Um, so on to the enhanced heat pump rebates. So these are the heat pump rebates as of January 1st, 2026. So if you were just to put a heat pump in and do nothing else, you would get 500 per ton up to 200, rather up to $2,000. And then your annual rebate cap for everything, including refrigerators and the heat pump, whatever else you were doing, would be 2,500 per customer per year. Where you can exceed that normal cap would be is if you end up bundling heat pump with insulation, or as you move further down this chart, you can see heat pump replacing fossil fuel systems. There's a greater rebate as well as a complete disconnect from our gas system and installation of heat pump. So kind of looking at the heat pump with insulation, you get that same rebate, 500 per ton, up to $2,000 for the heat pump itself. But then instead of having a $2,000 insulation cap, 50% of the cost up to $2,000, you end up getting 50% of the costs up to $3,000, which can make a pretty solid difference there, for a total annual rebate cap of $5,000. And going down the list, you got the heat pump replacing fossil fuel. So in this situation, if you were to replace your gas heating system or your oil heating system. And, if you were to, for instance, with gas, if you were to keep gas for cooking, you would still qualify for this $1,000 per ton rebate here. And then you'd get up to $5,000 for the heat pump at 1,000 a ton. And that insulation cap comes up again to 4,000, 50% of the cost up to 4,000, giving you a total potential rebate of $9,000 there. Um, but something to note with that is if you end up keeping fossil fuel for for cooking or something like that, you would not qualify for the heat pump rate A, which would be all electric. You'd still qualify for B, but you would get the enhanced rebate here. So there's a trade-off, I think, a little bit to the next step. So if you have gas and you're looking to replace gas completely from the system, then you'd get the highest rebate of $1,500 per ton, and that would cap out at 7,500 for the heat pump, and then still that increased 4,000 on the insulation, being 50% of the cost up to 4,000 for a total maximum rebate of 11,500. So with what we're trying to do is we're incentivizing heat pumps with insulation, as well as the removal of fossil fuel systems, and especially a focus on uh, on gas and removing gas, disconnecting it from the street to limit our gas peak load, which increases our prices significantly. So for the enhanced rebate steps, if you're going to do heat pumps and insulation, there's different steps along the way. And we have a couple different consultants, contractors we work with as far as those steps. Abode handles all the heat pump related steps, and then Next Zero will handle the energy audit steps, and things related to the insulation rebate. Um, so the process, if you're going to do both, is the pre-audit slash home energy audit. That's an insulation step. They get in there. It's a free audit. Next Zero is the company that does it. On our website, their number is there, as well as a link to their website. Um, Additionally, a heat pump step is consulting with Abode. We highly recommend before you start any work, you consult with Abode. Their wealth of knowledge on heat pumps. They can help you with a quote comparison tool, as they showed before, and they can really verify whether it's a heat pump that's going to qualify for our rebate, because it's got to be a cold climate rated heat pump. And it doesn't happen frequently, but there have been a couple of times where people have put in systems that don't qualify for our rebate, and that can be a significant hit to some people. So we highly recommend people utilize Abode as a resource. Again, they're a free resource for our customers, and it's definitely something that we highly recommend. The next step for both heat pumps and insulation would be hiring a contractor. I know Abode has a preferred contractor list, which is good. We don't recommend any specific contractors, but that's a good place to start if you don't have a place to start, or a contractor that preferred contractor that you have. And after that, these are some of the mandatory steps. The post audit with Next Zero, that shows the installation work that you've done, and then also the post installation QA with Abode, and that verifies the system that you put in, as well as it's necessary for us to have that information to actually process your rebates. So recently, I think it was last year, around the middle of the year, maybe closer to the end, we revamped our website when we made our forms more dynamic. And it's very, very much more user-friendly than it used to be. And so there's the online form, and whether it's any of the heat pump scenarios, you can choose from a drop-down menu, and this will, you kind of go from there and answer the specific questions. Um, Additionally, if you're disconnecting from, if you're looking for the gas disconnect highest rebate, there's a link to a gas disconnect form that you have to fill out and submit with it, because we need to have our gas crew come out and actually remove the meter and cut off the gas from the street level. So that's part of getting that enhanced rebate. So as far as presentation goes, that's kind of what I had prepared. I think there was a couple of questions in the chat. Olivia, if there is any.
We covered all the ones in the chat, so unless anyone has
Oh,
anything else.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's my email listed there. If if people have additional questions they want to send right to me. Um, Abode as well as Next Zero, their contacts are on our website when you go into the rebates tab. Um, and but yeah, that's that's pretty much the presentation. I don't know if anyone else has any questions they want to ask, but we appreciate you sticking with us the whole time and learning about heat pumps and the programs and things like that. So
I could talk about it all day, Joe. I put the link to the Abode website in the chat as well for everybody. So if you're interested in looking at a high-level program overview, find ways to get to the quote comparison service and schedule the no-cost consultation with us, that's a easy short link to get into there for you guys.
All right.
Always happy to chat.
We appreciate it. And thanks again to Olivia and also Paxton and Jamie um, for being part of the presentation.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you,
Without,
everyone.
Joe,
yes,
can you share the recording?
yes, the recording will be shared um, early next week, the latest, but possibly even tomorrow. And I can reach it. I can send it out to everybody on this call, as well as it will be on our YouTube channel and website, a link to that too. So, um, thank you to everyone who showed up, and have a good night.